Senator, when I opened my email and saw the notification that you will not seek re-election, I don't know if I was completely surprised, but it certainly makes a big change in the landscape of politics in Michigan. Can you talk to me a little bit about what went into this decision and kind of what it means going forward?
Sure. Well, Rick, first of all, it has been the honor of my life and will continue to be for the next 2 years until the end of my term, and to serve in so many different ways in Michigan. I'm born and raised here. Michigan is in my genes. And so certainly this was a decision I had to think long and hard about. But for me, it's family considerations, a 96-year-old mom who I love dearly, who is really want to be spending more time with rather than the rigors of a campaign. But also it's a very important time for me to pass the torch. We have wonderful leaders. We have a new generation. I came in as a new generation, first running when I was 24 years old for county commission. And it's always been important to me to support other leaders, to open doors, and to know when it's time to pass the torch to them. And so I feel this is the right time.
One of the interesting things that you mentioned in that release, and something that is kind of a stark reminder, even when you started in the mid 70s, there were not a lot of female elected officials in state or county or federal government. That number has grown certainly here in the state of Michigan. If you look at the legislature now, it's a much different picture. What, if any, role do you think you had in helping to promote having a broader representation in the legislature?
Well, you're right. When I came in, I was the youngest and the first woman to chair the county board, and then one of 8 women in the state house. There were none in the state senate, none statewide. It wasn't about going through open doors. It was frankly about busting down the doors. And so I hope those doors, and I think we've seen they're now open. I hope I've made a meaningful difference in that. I think our state is stronger and better served with the wonderful diversity of leadership that we have. And I've certainly seen over the years, step by step by step, where we've seen more women in local government, state, federal government, business, in every area of our life. And I think it's very inspiring.
We're going to have a lot of time over the next 2 years to talk about this, but I'm just trying to run through in my mind some of the high points of your time as a United States Senator. And of course, because agriculture is part of my background, and the fact that you've been the chairman of the Agriculture Committee stands out. But what are some of the things that you will look at and say, you know, this was part of what makes my time serving as a U.S. Senator really meaningful?
Well, there are many things over the years, and born and raised in Michigan, I really do see everything through the lens of Michigan, and have worked hard to make a difference in people's lives, both individually with my wonderful staff, as well as on policy. I believe strongly you don't have an economy unless somebody makes something and somebody grows something. And so chairing the Agriculture Committee, bringing, I think, the diversity of agriculture. Before my time in leadership, we didn't recognize fruits and vegetables and local farms and things that we have in Michigan were not a part of the Farm Bill, and now they are, and it's very important. Manufacturing, making things and moving to the next generation of advanced vehicles has been certainly something, as well as other advanced manufacturing. And then I have to say, I'm very proud to be leading a transformation nationally of the way we provide mental health and addiction services. We're making it part of healthcare instead of some afterthought that will make a big difference in people's lives. And the Great Lakes, everything from my very first bill in the Senate, that was a bill to stop oil and gas drilling in the Great Lakes and protect our waters. I have been laser focused on the Great Lakes.
I appreciate the fact that you certainly have family considerations. You talked about passing the torch. Let me ask you the same question that I've asked every member of the House, primarily, who have been leaving. Does the current environment in Washington play into your decision in any way? Because let's face it, It's a much different place. Even in 2000, when you were elected to the Senate, and there were certainly a lot of questions about the presidential election that year, and there was rancor, but there was also the ability to kind of come back together, and certainly the events in September of 2001 kind of helped coalesce, I think, to some degree. But is the current atmosphere in Washington in any way playing into your decision?
Rick, it's not a reason for my decision, but certainly things have changed dramatically. I mean, I believe in governing. I believe in common ground and reaching across the aisle, and I do it every day, which is how I've gotten so much done. But it is very different, and I think, have gone from just a lot of rancor and division, and social media certainly blows that up, and people that want to weaponize social media to get us divided against each other. But now it's another step. I mean, after January 6th, our democracy really has been threatened. There are people that, with violence and hate and bigotry and racism, really are committed to tearing our country apart. And so I'm very concerned about that. The great news for us in Michigan is that this last election rejected that. I'm so inspired by people coming out, older people, younger people, getting engaged. I mean, that's how we save our democracy. That's how we make it stronger. And I think we have to be very vigilant going forward.
As I mentioned earlier, and I look forward to the opportunity for you to come back in the studio for us to sit down for a long form interview and talk about all of these years. But as we wrap up this interview, is there one thing that you could look at in your time, either county government or state government or at the federal level, that you look at it and say that was the moment, or that was the thing that made this worth it?
You know, Rick, there are just too many things for me to think about that has made the difference. I think, rather than public service, what I would say is I grew up in Clare with a mom and dad who felt compelled, because of what we benefited from as children in school and church and community, to give something back every day. And so my mom never let me get away with complaining without saying, well, what can you do to make it better? How can you help solve it? And that has been embedded with me in every step of the way. And I always ask the question, how can I make things better? And hopefully I've contributed to doing that.
Senator, as I say, I look forward to talking to you in depth as we go through these next couple of years. But I thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
My pleasure.